Welcome everybody to my podcast, Big Little Small Talk. I'm Megan O'Hara-Sullivan and I love to talk, but I also love to listen. If you're new here, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to Big Little Small Talk. You're with me, Megan O'Hara-Sullivan, and today we're talking to Elisha Elisaia, who has got a big story to tell. And welcome, Elisha.
Thank you, Megan.
Now, Elisha, I know you because you were the footy coach at my son's rugby teams, and you played a very big part of life for a lot of kids who played football. And even my husband, when I said that I was going to interview, he said, "Oh yes, he's been an incredible role model for our kids." So how does that mantle sit with you?
Yeah, look, I'm happy to hear things like that. Coaching rugby, for me, it was always more than just the sport, and my job as coach was always to be more than just a coach, without interfering with raising how parents raise their children. I would always like to have little micro chats with the kids and find out how they're going. So that was a big part of my life, and I always wanted my players to be not only good players on the field but off the field.
So tell me, Elisha, about your cultural heritage. I see you've got it's not a Kiwi band tattoo there. Where is your heritage?
So both my parents are Samoan, and they moved to New Zealand, and all my brothers and sisters and myself, we were all born in New Zealand. But we're Samoan heritage, and over the years, and having kids now, wanting to know their heritage, it plays a big part of my life.
Yeah. Tell me about your family. Like when you think back, Elisha, as a little boy in New Zealand growing up, how many kids are in that family? That big Samoan family, I'm taking it?
Yeah, look, there's 5 of us. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. Growing up in a Samoan family, it's a very religious circle, so religion is important, family is important. So we were always going to church functions, Bible studies, places like that. I was very young when we were in New Zealand. We moved here when I was 7 years old, but I still remember the Samoan community in New Zealand, the church services, the strict rules that we had. No playing or mucking around or playing sport on the Sabbath, on the Sunday. So that was a big part of my life growing up.
Where did you fit into that family of 5?
I was the second youngest.
And was it a Catholic ceremony or service that you were going to? What sort of religion are we talking?
I grew up as a Presbyterian, but a lot of the Samoan churches have a Catholic background. And then I guess with a slight change to like a uniting church as well.
Is it a type of church where there's a lot of singing and is it much more sort of straight-laced, sitting down and don't move?
No, it's a lot of singing. There's a lot of singing, a lot of people taking part in the church ceremony. There's a lot of worship as well, and a lot of learning from the Bible, but the singing is an important part, and it's almost like everyone knows their roles with the natural harmony in the singing.
Did you sing together as a family at home as well?
Yes, we did. It was very common that my elder sister would bring the guitar out, and when we would do our Bible studies at home, after that we would do our singing, and then my dad would always play a major role in that. And then without my mum and dad, my dad would encourage just the kids to sing as well. So yeah, that was a big part of our lives.
What type of work were your mother and father doing, and why did they come to Australia?
My dad was a dry cleaner, and he was a dry cleaner all his life. And my mum would just do, not just do, but my mum would do factory work. We moved to Australia because my dad just wanted us to have a better life. When he moved to New Zealand from Samoa, it was for him and my mum to have a better life. And then he would help his family to get to New Zealand. Like, he'd work and send money back and get them to New Zealand to experience that better life as well. And then I think he decided, once he had all the children, that, you know, Australia was going to be a better place for us, more opportunity, and better education. So when I was 7 years old, and I think it was Boxing Day 1978, we moved here straight to Brisbane from Christchurch, and my dad started again. Yeah.
Did he start working for someone in the dry cleaning industry, or did he try and set up something on his own? I mean, that'd be a fairly big undertaking, I would imagine.
Yeah, look, he only worked for 2 different dry cleaning businesses whilst here in Australia. And he worked till about 70 years old. He must have enjoyed it, although it looked hard to me, especially in summer. But he must have enjoyed it. But I think also in the back of his head, it was always about trying to fulfill that dream of owning a home, looking after his children. And I think that's just what kept driving him to keep working.
I can imagine, as you said that about the dry cleaning, I can imagine for you now, if you ever go into a dry cleaner, that smell must be so evocative of your father.
Oh, it triggers me so much. You know, there were Christmas holidays where we were too young to be left at home, so he would take us to work, and we wouldn't go into his work, but we would just sit near the car. There was a park across the road that we would go and play in, and then he would make sure that we were behaving every few hours, coming out, checking on us, and making sure that we were, we were still fed and eating and not spending money on rubbish. But late in the afternoon, we were allowed to go into the store, and just those smells, the cleaning liquids, the steam, seeing the clothes. Like, if my wife gets dry cleaning now, I look at the clothes. I straight away look at the clothes and compare it to what I remember. How they're doing it now.
On the upside, I suppose, you would have been all beautifully tailored, were you? Was there very much of the that people would leave things there and he'd bring them home?
Yes, yeah. There were clothes that weren't collected, and I guess his boss would let him, knowing that he had 5 children, let him take the clothes home, and then he would look to see who would closely fit that, and even if we didn't like it, we had to wear it.
Well, I'm thinking you boys would be getting around in the dinner jackets, the girls would be getting around in the ball gowns. What suburb were you living in Brisbane?
In Brisbane, we grew up in Bulimba, on the south side of Brisbane, and then my father, in the mid-80s, I think it was, moved out to Cleveland, out in the Redland Bay area.
And while you were growing up, Elisha, were you still then hooked into the Samoan community?
Yes. Here in Australia, my dad would go from different Samoan community and just see which I think one suited him and his family the best. And we go to church, Samoan churches, but we'd also go to the local Presbyterian church as well, and that became our base, the local Presbyterian church. And then my eldest sister, she started to explore religion here in Australia as well, and back in the days they'd call it a Pentecostal, which is just like a charismatic church. So, and that became one of the biggest churches in Queensland. Charismatic churches in Queensland. So we would float between the two. My father, when it came to religion, was always exploring the different religions, even if he didn't believe or understand what they meant. It didn't scare him from going to see what they were about. So it was common for us to welcome Jehovah's Witness and Mormons into the home, and Dad would listen. That meant we had to listen, to what they had to say, and then they debate, and then we go to their churches, but our Presbyterian church was our foundation. So.
And when you think back, Elisha, to your childhood, was it a loving childhood, a happy childhood, a lot of sport then?
It's funny, and I think kids think this today. Whilst you're growing up, you see your life one way, and then when you get older, as I am, and you reflect, it was a totally different thing. I reflect now, and I see that my childhood was a very safe and loving place. It was strict. It was very strict, and religion played a big part. I'm pretty sure the Samoan culture is God first, family second, and that's the way that I know I was brought up. So, yeah, it was loving. I understand that my dad did everything he could to provide, and my mum, she went out and worked, and I don't think my dad was happy about it, thinking that it was his job to be the provider, but he understood to pay off the mortgage, have 5 children to clothe and feed. So yeah, he had to let mum go out and contribute to the household. Sport was a big part for myself and my brothers. I think it was a really good outlet to release our energy. My dad wouldn't let us play sport on Sunday, and a lot of sport played on a Sunday, and at the time, in the early 80s, a lot of Australian families didn't understand why we weren't allowed to play sport on a Sunday, and they thought it was a bit funny not playing sport on a Sunday because of religion. I'm not saying all of them didn't understand. I know others understood, but it was hard. And it was hard for us. I know myself. I just wanted to play sport.
Was it always rugby that you loved?
Yeah. It was either rugby or rugby league. Of the 3 boys, I played a fair bit of cricket as well. I loved the cricket, and I excelled in it. In the back of my head, watching my brothers excel at rugby league, that's what I thought. Well, that's what I wanted to do, I guess. I just wanted to be like my big brothers, and I did cricket as my second sport, but enjoyed it when I did it. But rugby league and, for me, rugby union were probably 2 of my best loves. Yeah.
I'll just remind the listeners that they're on 102.7 FM, and we're in Big Little Small Talking, and we're talking to Elisha Elisaia. Elisha, when you finished school, what did you do when you finished school?
When I finished school, look, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I ended up on the Sunshine Coast near Kenilworth, and I was working on a racehorse stud, helping train racehorses. And I was there for a few years, and that's where I met my wife. She would come over, Kylie, she would come over and ride the racehorses, because she was a riding instructor, and she would ride the horses through the state forestry, which backed up on the property as well, so that instead of just taking them to the track and doing their work, we felt them going through the state forestry was just a good mix. So she would come over and take the horses through the forestry, and we just, got to talking, I guess, and one thing led to another.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that when you were talking about your older brothers and sisters, and I wondered whether there was any sort of cultural pressure from your parents to partner with people from the Samoan community.
I think it was something that was spoken about from time to time, especially when we were younger. But as we got older, our dynamic in the family changed quite a bit. My mum passed away when I was 15, and with that, the family got a bit rocky. We made it a bit harder for my father, who was trying to, I guess, do the best he could. When I was 15 and the second youngest, so my two older brothers. They had already left home or leaving home. That just left myself and my youngest sister. I guess we didn't take the passing of my mother well, and my reflecting, my dad didn't as well. So hence me moving to the Sunshine Coast. But as the dynamics of the family changed, I think my father was just happy for us to have partners and to have an Australian girlfriend. I think he was fine with it. I know if he had it his way, he would have been happy for me to marry another Samoan girl or Islander girl.
Mm. Yeah. What did your mother pass away from, Elijah?
Breast cancer. My mum passed away from breast cancer. So it was funny because, well, it wasn't funny, but when it was all happening, all I knew is that my mum had cancer. I didn't know much about cancer back then. This was around 1986. And my dad never spoke about it. My mum never spoke about it. I knew my mum was going to hospital, but I guess my naivety was just for being checked on. I didn't know it was chemo. And then there was a certain stage where she was just in hospital, dying, I guess, but I was never told that she was dying. We were told that she was just sick. And then all of a sudden, my mum passes, and I remember being pulled out of school. I remember going home and my other brothers and sisters were there, and then I remember my dad just sitting there and saying that my mum had died, and I was confused. Died of what? And I look back now and then communicating and my older brothers and sisters explaining to me, I guess they didn't really know too much themselves, but I think that was just my dad's cultural way of keeping us apart from it. But I don't think he realised, and at that time, I don't think he realised that it might have affected us in a different way as well. But
I mean, he was probably just dealing with his own trauma and probably not even realising that you didn't understand or you didn't know the whole truth. And I mean, it's such a lesson for us, isn't it, about how your kids perceive things, and that they need to know what's going on the whole time, don't they?
Yeah, that's right.
So we're making eyes over Kylie over the horses as we're riding through the forest. What happened after that?
So we were boyfriend girlfriend for a while, and then I got a phone call asking if I wanted to have a job working back in Brisbane. A friend of mine called. There was a steel company in Brisbane that were very busy, and I decided that I would leave the Sunshine Coast and move back to Brisbane. Kylie and I didn't know how our relationship would go, so I said, I think it's worthwhile trying to stay in the relationship. I didn't mind going back to the Sunshine Coast on weekends, and so Kylie made the effort to come to Brisbane on weekends, and I'd go up to the Sunshine Coast as well. I moved to Brisbane for work, and we just kept commuting. And then after, I think, 6 months, Kylie moved to Brisbane, and she enrolled Southbank College in hospitality. And we started living together in Brisbane, and we lived there for a few years, yeah.
And you ended up getting married and having children. How many children did you have?
We got married. We moved to Toowoomba for my work, and we had 3 children here in Toowoomba.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're living in Toowoomba. We're being the rugby coach. You're working for Southern Queensland Steel. What's your role with Southern Queensland Steel?
So I've been fortunate enough to be hired as the branch manager of Southern Queensland Steel.
So you've been there with them since when you went to work for them in Brisbane?
So I worked in Brisbane with a different steel company, a big steel company, and I work with them here in Toowoomba as well. But I've opened a few steel businesses, and then Southern Steel, there was an opportunity here for me to come and take over. So I've been here for 6 years now, working for Southern Steel.
Mm-hmm. So Elijah, at the end of 2020, you're out on your driveway. What happened?
Yeah, it was 2022, November 2022, and I was hosing. I have a concrete balcony, and I was hosing, cleaning. My daughter was having a early Christmas party for her work, so it was my birthday weekend, and we just got back from being away, my wife and I, and I went upstairs knowing what I had to do to help. So I started hosing the concrete balcony, and I'd finished, so I just had to pick the hose up and put it away, and I walked across to pick the hose halfway, lift the hose up and bring it back to the tap. And as I stopped and bent over to grab the hose, the concrete was wet, both my feet slipped out underneath me, almost like a cartoon character when you see the feet slip out, and I landed on the base of my skull, just the top of my spine. And when I hit, I laid there and instantly realised that I couldn't move my legs and my arms. I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't hear any noise, but I was looking up and I could see. I didn't know if I could talk. So I just laid there, and I don't know how long all of this was happening. I just laid there and until I could hear street noise again and birds. I remember hearing birds. So I tried to speak. I said my wife's name just to myself, and I could hear myself say her name. And then, still realising that nothing was moving, I tried to say her name louder, and just by chance she was walking out the front door, which was below me. I yelled her name, Kylie, and I don't think it was too loud, but she heard me, and she replied saying yes, and then I said help. And within seconds I remember still looking up, and then I saw her face, and I said, I've fallen, I can't move. And then everything just started happening from there. Ringing the ambulance, slowly feeling pain in my shoulder. So yeah, it was a scary time. It was that uncertainty of what was happening. And yeah.
At that time, when the ambulance was arriving and you were sort of almost coming back into yourself, like, did you sort of jump to the straight away, I'm going to be a paraplegic, or you just didn't even think about that?
No, I didn't think that. I'm not too sure what I was thinking. I knew that something was wrong with me. I knew that I had to go to the hospital. I was feeling quite a bit of pain, starting to feel quite a bit of pain in my shoulder, but I couldn't move, and I kept trying to move my feet and my hands. No, and I knew every time it was unsuccessful. And then, due to the pain, I started to feel like I was wanting to sleep. So my wife and the neighbour, who was a retired nurse, they wouldn't let me sleep. They kept keeping me awake, kept talking to me. So I don't feel I had time to think of the worst. And I don't think I would have wanted to think the worst. But yeah, just waiting for the ambulance, and then once I took the painkillers, or that green whistle, once I sucked on the green whistle, my memory of it just started to fade away until I was in Brisbane Hospital.
I'll just remind the listeners that we're on Big Little Small Talk. You're with me, Megan O'Hara-Sullivan, and we're talking to Elisha Elisaia, who is up to the part of his story where he fell over on the driveway one day and can't move his arms or his legs, and he's in the ambulance going to the Brisbane hospital. Elisha, when they took you straight to Brisbane, and what happened then?
So, we did the scans, all the scans, x-rays, everything like that, and I was lying in a hospital bed, and a doctor and a surgeon walked up to my wife, and I was in and out, but I remember them saying to my wife, we have to operate. He has spinal damage. It's important that we operate, and as soon as possible. So next minute I've got a doctor standing above me and saying to my wife, do we understand what has to be done, telling us the pros and cons, and do we accept that all of these things can happen. My wife was signing paperwork to say that we allow and them to move forward with it all, and I was being rushed into surgery. I ended up having surgery from my C2 to T3. They replaced parts of my spine with titanium spine, and I ended up having spinal fusion as well. And it was...
How quickly did you have that surgery after the accident?
One day, so it was pretty much the next day.
And how was Kylie faring in all of this? Can you remember?
Yeah, I
Was she
can.
completely stoic, or was she just terrified? Were you terrified?
I found I didn't have time to be scared, and all I knew that if something was wrong with me, something needed to be done. So I was happy to have the surgery. To me, it just made sense to have the surgery. My wife Kylie has been the rock. Like I know there were times when she was scared, but I felt she just packed that up in a box and threw it over her shoulder and just played the role of my foundation, and she supported me through that journey. She's been incredible.
And I suppose, you're thinking, what am I going to do? What's going to happen about work? What's going to happen about my kids? How am I going to live in my house? Or just none of those things going through your mind. You're too sort of in a world of pain at that stage, and drugs and everything else?
Yeah, no, Megan, everything you just said was going through my mind, started to go through my mind. I really enjoyed my job, and I enjoyed the people that I worked for and with. I couldn't see myself working again, but I knew I wanted to work, and I didn't want to be different. I didn't want to be a paraplegic. I wanted my life back. I wanted my life to be better than what I had. I always worked to better myself and be there for my children. So I was looking at how my life was going to change. The surgeon, after my operation, they kept me in the room in the back the recovery room. Sorry, they kept me there longer than what they normally would have done. I stayed in there for another 10 hours after surgery. And then my wife got a phone call. The surgeon actually phoned Kylie, and apparently they don't do that. And it was to say, just to remind her, the surgeon, she said to my wife, you do understand we had to operate. There was no other option. And anything could have happened. And my wife was a bit confused and said, yes, we understand that. And Elisha agreed that was what had to be done. And she said, well, I'm just letting you know that no matter what happens moving forward, it just had to be done. So Kylie started to worry a bit after that. I was unaware that that conversation was had, and then later on the surgeon spoke to Kylie, and I was still in and out with the medication. The surgeon said to Kylie that I will never walk again. And she wasn't saying it to try and motivate us to try and walk again. She was saying it because she couldn't see that I would ever walk again. My arms and legs weren't working and weren't reacting the way that they would hope that it would. So,
who, Elisha, was the person to tell you that then? Was it Kylie or was it the doctor?
It was the doctor, and with Kylie being there, and it was a while after. It wasn't straight away. I remember it being a few weeks later, and I'm not sure if they were waiting for something to change, but yeah, I remember it wasn't the surgeon, it was the doctor underneath her that, and the way that they said it was they've already told Kylie. It was like, we've had a conversation with your wife, and it appears, the surgery was good, all of these sort of things, but it looks like you might not walk again.
And what was that moment like? Like, do you remember that crystal clear, that moment when those words came out of that person's mouth? Did you think, that's not true, that's not going to be me, I'm going to be the exception to the rule? Or did you just fall in a heap? Or what happens?
Yeah, look, I'm not sure what happened. I remember hearing those words. I remember looking at my wife, and everything after he said that sentence was like a movie. Everything after that, all I heard was mumbling as I just stared at my wife, and she was just looking at me. And then I remember him getting up and walking away. So everything after that, I didn't hear what he had to say. And I remember Kylie holding my hand and saying, "That doesn't have to be you." And through my head, I was just looking at everything I feared, everything that I didn't want me to be. And I was looking around the room and seeing other people laying there in bed, and some looking worse than me. And I remember coaching. I don't know why this come back to me, and I think it's because that's maybe what I love doing, and I've been fortunate enough to coach some really good players, but also better human beings as well. And then I started to remember, different situations where I would say to certain players, I need more, I want more from you, be it at training or during the game, going to players or saying to the team, I know you can give me more, why aren't you? I want more, I expect more, you should expect more. So that's what drove me. I decided, no, that's not me. I want more. So who was I to ask these players, and most of them, as you know, Megan, were teenagers. Who was I to ask them for more, and then I sit back and not give more myself? So that had been my drive. That's all I kept hearing myself. That's all I kept seeing. I kept seeing faces of players, young teenage kids, that I had asked for more, and I imagined them asking me for more, and who was I to say no? Who was I to not give that more?
Elisha, that's an incredible story. That's amazing. I mean, you know, to think all those ratty little teenagers were going to come back and help you someday. So tell me the trajectory then. Like, how long did you stay in hospital? And then, I mean, really, it's only just over 12 months ago, isn't it? It was November 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, look,
So how much movement have you got, and what rehab have you... Yeah.
Yeah, 2 months after the operation, after the surgery, I started to get movement on the left side of my body. My left leg and my right arm started to come back slowly. And then, you know, over the time, I started getting very slow movement on the right side. But you could see and I could feel the difference, and the left side was so much stronger. So I ended up staying at hospital in a total of 7 months, I think it was. And I think it was close to 4 months in rehabilitation. So I had to wait for an opening in rehabilitation. The PA hospital is said to be the #1 spinal surgery and recovery place in Queensland, so it's the reason why I was sent to the PA. But they've only got 40 beds, I think it is, in spinal rehabilitation. So I had to wait 3 months before I could get a spot, someone to leave and me to go in.
And where were you? You're still in hospital while you're waiting the 3 months? And
yes.
You're in a wheelchair the whole time, learning how to use a wheelchair?
Yes, I was at hospital, just in a general ward, I think. And yes, learning to sit in a wheelchair. You know, I remember that time because they said that I had to learn to sit in a wheelchair. And I remember looking at them thinking, how silly, how hard is it to sit in a wheelchair? So they said that I had to sit in a wheelchair for an hour. And I just kept thinking, this is so silly. Like, I sit in my chair at work for 12 hours at times. So yeah, learning to sit in a wheelchair was really hard. I couldn't even last 10 minutes the first time in the wheelchair. The pain, and I had no core strength. So the pain and the stamina of sitting in the wheelchair, which I couldn't believe was hard, after 10 minutes I had to get out and back into bed. So I had to slowly build that up to an hour and then 2 hours. I spent a lot of time in there begging Kylie to help get me up, and she just kept saying, 5 more minutes, you can do it, just 5 more minutes. And then that 5 minutes turned into 10 minutes, into 15 minutes. So yeah, it took me a good 3 months to sit in a wheelchair for 2 hours.
Yeah, they're all the things that you just have no idea. Elisha, I've come out to your work today. Can you just give me a quick rundown on how you've been able to stay here and keep working, and what incredible things they have helped you with and that you've been able to do and stay connected into your work?
Can't speak any more highly of this business and the owners of this business and the senior management underneath the owners.
How soon after the accident did you come back to work, and how did you was the workplace set up for being in a wheelchair? And
No, so whilst I was in hospital, I kept getting paid. My monthly pay was going in, and the general manager of the business was visiting me twice a week in hospital, just checking on me, and even just coming and having just conversation. I kept saying to him, I'm getting paid. And he said, yeah, well, why wouldn't you? And, I really didn't understand. So I was so lucky. And then whilst I was in hospital, there are different departments that check on you and asking, are you wanting to go back to work? when do you see yourself going back to work? So I said yes, I wanted to go back to work, and I'll go back to work the day after I get home, was my plan. And they said, oh, okay, how long do you intend to stay there? And I said, oh, well, I know that I'm not well, so I'll probably just do an 8-hour day. And they were looking at me like I was kidding myself, but I didn't understand why they thought that I was being silly. And my wife ended up saying, you're just being silly. It's not going to be like that. So they wanted me to do 1 day a week, 2 hours that one day, and I would do that for the first 6 weeks. And I could not get my head around that. So I came to work a week after, which was earlier than what they wanted me to. Work was not set up for me. I couldn't sit at my desk. You know, a lot of workplaces already now have disability toilets, and we had that. But I was only here for 2 hours for the first week, and then you know, I had meetings with my HR department. They were always ringing, checking, see if there was anything I could do. And then these different organisations were offering me help as well. So there was an organisation called Back to Work, and they helped organise a desk that would rise and fall, so I could drive my wheelchair underneath, and just some other assistant technology that I needed. So, but work, you know, it takes time for those things to happen. But work came to me and said, oh look, let us just buy it. We'll buy it. We'll get it here, and you can start whenever you want. So I said no to work. I said, look, I think you guys have done so much for me. It's so understanding. No, I don't want you to. So they left it to me, and they were happy for me to come to work that 1 day, 2 hours, and they were still paying me my full wage all the way through. I couldn't be thankful enough, you know, just knowing that was there, and Kylie was still able to pay bills and everything like that, just rest my mind at ease so much.
Transformational, isn't it? I'll just remind the listeners that they're on 102.7 FM, and we're in Big Little Small Talk, and we're talking to Elisha Elisaia. I was going to ask you, I read somewhere, and it said this, Elijah, you can take or leave any of this if you like it. Questions I don't get often enough, and sentences I'd like to hear more often when I'm in a wheelchair. Can I try using your wheelchair? Can you have sex? Can I get you something from the bar?
Yeah.
I mean, there must be so many cliches about being in a wheelchair and the mercy of other people.
Yes, I do. I do. This wheelchair life, I'm still getting used to. I still don't understand. I'm still getting used to it. I'm seeing that so many people are understanding. I wasn't sure how it was going to be. It's so good to see people wanting to make space for me, you know, stopping to let me go first. All of those things, just the courteousness, the kindness. I was totally unaware. The thing I keep asking myself is, if someone in a wheelchair was coming towards me, would I act the way that people act towards me now? I don't know, because I've never thought about it. There's a lot of people out there that show respect for someone with a disability, and it's really good to see. And young people as well, you know.
Tell me what happened a couple of weeks ago with your car.
So I woke up on a Sunday morning with my daughter running up the stairs in our house saying, I think someone's been in the house. She's yelling that. And as she said that, I looked towards the window and I see the light, the indicator light flashing, as if someone's unlocking a car. I hear a car start up and it drives away. So my wife quickly gets up, opens the blinds, and 2 cars are missing. So we had some juveniles break into our house, and I don't know how long they were in the house, but they broke into the house. They had covered their faces and got 2 sets of keys and stole the 2 cars. The scary thing, Megan, was that one set of keys was in my daughter's handbag and on her bedside table, and she was asleep. So they got into the house, got into her bedroom, her door was closed, got into the bedroom, got her handbag, took a set of keys out, and I don't know how long they were in her room while she was sleeping, but that was the worst feeling I had felt. So
absolutely. But what was in the car, Elisha?
In one of the cars was my manual wheelchair, and you know, I really need that manual wheelchair because I do have a motorised chair, and there are a lot of places that I can take it, but there's also a lot of places that I can't, and that's where I need my manual wheelchair. And there are trips that we take to Brisbane, and it's just easier and quicker to take our normal car. If I'm in the motorised wheelchair, we have to take a van. So the manual wheelchair is just such an important part of my life, and that was in the car, and that is missing, and I don't know if I'll ever see that again.
So that, I understand, Elisha, is a specialty wheelchair that's been made for you, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That was a custom-made wheelchair, and with all the measurements of my limbs and my body, and special cushion as well. That, you know, the cushion took a month for me to trial before I chose that one. So when they measured me up for it in hospital, to when I finally got it, when I'd left hospital, it was around 8 months before I saw that wheelchair. That's how long it takes for that wheelchair.
Elisha, I understand that they've found the cars, you've got the cars back, or they know where the cars are, so, and they've got the guys. So have they been questioned about the wheelchair?
Yes, they have. So they've been questioned, but those people are saying that they don't know where the wheelchair is. They didn't even know that there was a wheelchair in the back of the car. My car that had the wheelchair, they were driving around Toowoomba in it for 3 days, I think it was. They'd been cited by people posting messages on social media saying that they've seen the car in different places. There was actually footage, a video, a person took a video of them in the car driving around Toowoomba. So yeah, they had a great time driving around Toowoomba for the 3 or 4 days, I think it was, before they were caught.
The impact on your life has just been so huge. The whole youth crime and all of that's a conversation for another day. But unfortunately, we're getting to the end of our time. I don't know whether you've heard any Big Little Small Talk interviews, but I always ask every guest who their favourite royal is. Now, this person doesn't have to be a British person, and they don't necessarily have to be a living person. Do you have someone, Elisha, who is your favourite royal?
Yes, I do. My favourite royal is Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon. That is the Queen's mother. She's my favourite royal. I remember being very young and seeing documentaries on the royal family, and she just seemed to be a rock.
Are we talking the Queen's mother, as in Queen Elizabeth, or are we talking Camilla's mother?
The Queen Elizabeth's mother.
Yeah, the Queen Mother, right?
Yes, the Queen's mother. She was fantastic, I think, during the wars that she has been through. When she passed on the crown to our Queen Elizabeth II. Her being in the background all those years, I'm sure Elizabeth II would have leaned on her at times, but I felt that she was a real rock for the royal family. She seemed to be a queen. The Queen Mother seemed to be someone that was approachable from the public. She loved her horse racing, but she was strong. She was strong when she needed to be strong. When the people needed someone, they could always look at her, just like her daughter in later years. So that's my favourite role.
That's brilliant. I don't think I've ever had anyone with the Queen Mother. As you said her name, I could see a lot of feathers and hats and matching gloves and matching outfits. But I do remember the Queen Mother. That's brilliant. All right, my very last question is, what's the song that can't keep you off the dance floor?
Eagle Rock. Eagle Rock.
Do you still dance, Elisha?
A little bit. Even now with music, I might tap my foot and move my hands, but behind closed doors, when it's just my wife, I will stand up and we'll hold each other and we'll just move side to side. And things like that just keeps me driving in the background. Those quiet times and the things that I know that I can do better. So, yeah, I still dance. Not to Eagle Rock.
Something a little bit more romantic.
That's right.
I can't wait to hear Eagle Rock after this interview. Elisha, thank you for being so open and thank you for sharing your story with myself and the listeners. And it's been, truly, you are an inspiration. You are an inspirational person. So thank you.
No, thank you, Megan. Thank you very much.
That's it for this week. Thanks for joining me on Big Little Small Talk. I hope you can make the time to join me next week. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favourite podcast app.